Hello and welcome to the She is Courageous podcast, your weekly reminder that courage comes before confidence and mindset is where it starts. I'm Shelley Bosworth, business mindset coach, helping women to stop holding themselves back and start showing up boldly in business, work, and of course life. This podcast is your nudge to ditch the self-doubt, quieten the overthinking, and take action that builds real confidence. Because she is courageous and she is you. Hello and welcome back to the She is Courageous podcast. It's been a minute, hasn't it? So we have had a little break from the podcast. And before I get into the fullness of today's episode, I want to start with some context ahead of, let's call it a new season. I took some time off from the podcast for a reason. Things have been shifting for me for a little while, and it meant I needed a bit of realignment, and that's what's been going on for me in the background. And taking a pause from the podcast was to ensure that we realign this too. Now, a few months ago, I closed my membership community, the She is Courageous Collective, and I didn't make a big deal about it publicly. I just got on with it in the background. Now, I didn't close the collective because it wasn't working. I didn't close it because I didn't love it. I didn't close it because the people in it weren't incredible. I closed it because, in truth, it no longer fit where I am going. Now, there's probably a whole episode on that decision alone and the navigating everything that came with it, because a lot came with it. But I do want to tell you that it was one of the hardest decisions I've made, probably since I started my business. It took me a while to make the decision, and then it took me even longer to act on the decision. Now, on paper, it made no sense. It was successful. The feedback was that people really valued the community and everything that we brought to the community and what they were getting from it. I'd built it over the last 3 years. I'd put a lot into it, but something in me knew that the version of Shelley who built that membership, who launched, built and grew that, is not the one who builds what comes next. And I went through a lot of maybe it just needs to evolve with me, but actually I had to get really honest. And the moment that I got honest about that was the moment that I stopped trying to make something fit that in truth had run its course for me, even if not for everybody else. And that in itself was something I had to navigate. But when I got honest about it, everything got clearer. I'm not saying it got easier, but it did get clearer. And that is what this first episode of the podcast today is about. This first episode of this new season. Now, I haven't worked in seasons on the podcast before, and I'm not sure if that's going to become a thing, if I'm honest. I'm still like, about using that word. But what I am saying is, I'm bringing to you from today a little mini season of solo episodes, and they may feel a bit different because they are. Guest episodes will be back, but over the next 4 to 6 weeks, these will be solo episodes with a slightly different angle, because I've been doing a lot of thinking about who I want this podcast to be for, what conversations I want to be having, and what I'm seeing again and again in the women that I work with. And I keep coming back to this. The women who come to me, who find me, who are drawn to me, the founders, the senior leaders, the women that are building businesses, building teams, making big decisions, holding huge amounts together across professional and personal lives. They don't actually need more motivation. They think they do. Okay, we all think we need more motivation, right? But you listening right now, you don't need more motivation. You don't need another framework. You don't need a confidence boost. You don't need me to tell you you're capable, because you already know. Now, I hope that you do feel motivated and inspired by everything you hear. But what you need is someone who will meet you where you actually are. Someone who will name what's really going on. Someone who will give you something that you can genuinely use. And that's what I want this podcast to be in these coming episodes. And let's see where we go from there. That is what this mini season is built for. So this is for you today if you have built a business or a career and it's been going pretty damn well, actually. It's for you if you know that you're capable, you're driven, and by most external measures, you're doing pretty well at life. But maybe something has shifted. Something feels different. Maybe the pressure feels a bit different. Maybe the decisions that used to come easily take far more mental energy than you want them to. You're carrying more than you let on. So many women are carrying more than they're letting on. And somewhere underneath all of that is a feeling that you've been, and I've got the word operating, and forgive me for referring to us humans as operating, but I'm an operator. But that you feel like you've been operating, the habits, the approach, the version of you that got you here might not be enough for what comes next. That's what this is about. Because that's what I've been through, and I'm sharing that openly. And I've definitely been going through that for about 6 to 9 months. And interestingly, so have so many of my clients. I think we've stepped into 2026 and we're all at the next level of us. Maybe you are too. We aren't who we were, but we might not be who we want to be yet. Which means we're on our way and we're discovering actually it's not as easy as I hoped, thought, or wanted to be. Now, if any of that's landed, stay with me. That is what today is about. Now, maybe you've heard the quote. I mean, I bet you have, because I've used it tons and tons of times. What got you here won't get you there. I come back to that line, that quote, often with myself, with my clients. And I'm going to say it again. What got you here won't get you there. That's what today is about. It sounds so simple and it makes so much sense, right? But I want to sit with what that actually means. Because here's what I see too often. I think most women hear that statement, what got you here won't get you there. And they're like, you're right. You're right. So I need to do more. I need to learn more. I need to have more tools in my armory. I need to work harder. I need to upskill somehow. I need to do something very differently because what got me here won't get me there. And that's the wrong response, but that is what I see as the go-to so often. But the gap that I want to talk about isn't a skills gap. It's an identity gap. And those are two very different, let's call them problem challenges with two very different solutions. Now, a skills gap, yes, you close that by learning something new. And we may have skills gaps in terms of where we're going to. But an identity gap closes by becoming someone different. And that's scary, right? And it's fundamentally harder. And it's why most people are not having that conversation and aren't leaning into, to get where I want to go, I need to become someone different. I need to be slightly different. That doesn't mean who you are isn't good enough. It doesn't mean everything you've done until this moment isn't enough. It doesn't mean you aren't enough. Let's be really damn clear about that. But we have to evolve and grow, and that's not just do more, learn more. Your identity has to evolve with you. So let's talk about the identity gap. Because your identity, the story you hold about who you are, about what you are capable of, about how you operate in this world, personally and professionally, has been built on everything up until this moment, but built in an earlier chapter of your life. I have a friend who refers to our life as our story, right? We all talk about our story. I just did it. I just used those words, the story you hold about who you are. So if we think about story in chapters, your current identity has been built in earlier chapters or a chapter of your life. Maybe it was built when you were proving yourself to someone or to yourself. Maybe it was built when resourcefulness and hard work and holding everything together were the things that got results. Maybe your identity was built in a really challenging time when you were at a different place, literally or metaphorically. Whatever that version of you was, that identity has undoubtedly served you well. It's built what you are, where you are, what you have now. But as your business grows, your circumstances change faster than your self-concept does. So let's just be really clear about what do I mean by that. As your business grows, the circumstances around you will shift and change. Now, we're all evolving all the time, but sometimes we don't evolve and grow at the speed we need to for the speed of change we want for our businesses, for our goals, our dreams. So if we use business as an example, a business gets bigger, which might mean the team gets larger, which might mean the decisions carry more weight, which might mean your visibility increases, not just on social media, but in terms of who you are putting yourself in front of or who you need to put yourself in front of. The pressure compounds. And yet, if you are still operating, at least in part, from the identity of the woman who started the business, who was building in the early years, that's not going to get you the results you want. That's not the woman who's now leading the business she says she wants now for growth. In fact, I had this conversation with a corporate client yesterday who has taken on a bigger team. And actually, fundamentally, she is still operating as the leader of a smaller team. And so she was almost at risk of bypassing people in the team because they were at a higher level. And what she was nervous about was dealing with people at a higher level because she hadn't done that before. Well, that's the identity she now needs to work on. She needs to become the leader of the leaders. None of this is about failing. Okay, everything you've done until now has got you to where you are, and there's strength in that. And we're not just saying leave all that at the door and move on to become someone completely different, but we have to carry with us the bits that work, evolve the bits that need evolving, and drop the bits that are no longer serving us. And this identity gap, it is almost universal among high achieving women. And once you see it, honestly, you can't unsee it. So it's a bit like me realising that the She is Courageous Collective, I loved it. I loved the women. I loved the interaction every single week with them. But I realised it wasn't what I wanted in terms of the business model as I move forward. It isn't going to get me to where I say I want to go because I've shifted and changed my goals, the business model I want to have, the priorities I've got. I've changed as a person. Once I saw that, I couldn't unsee, which meant I had to face into what do I do with that. So let's just keep talking about this identity gap. And this list is not exhaustive, but I wanted to share some insights, certainly over the last 6 months, into myself. And as I've said, the people I work with, the circles I'm circling in. I wanted to kind of give a few examples. And I think the 3 most common places that the identity gap starts to show up are this: team, decisions, and actually how you relate to your own success. So let's just go into that in a little bit more detail. Team. Now this is the big one. For most business owners, for most leaders, as you grow and step up, it means that you build a team. Whether that's building your own team in your business or taking on responsibility for team in a corporate role. Fundamentally, most of us have built our success, inverted commas, by doing. We all start out as lone rangers in whatever we do. I did in my corporate career, let alone in my business. So we start out alone and we build our success by doing, by being the one who makes everything happen, by holding the standards we want, by getting things done. But as we grow, we bring people in. We have to. We can't do everything. As we grow, there's more that needs to be done, or there's different things that need to be done that perhaps we aren't as capable of. So whether it's outsourcing, growing your own team, or stepping into a leadership role, suddenly we find ourselves having people around us, hopefully good people. But what often happens is we still can't fully let go. Not because we don't trust them, but because our identity has been built on being the one who gets things done, being the one who does this, that, and the other. Our identity has been built on being good at certain things and getting the recognition and the results and the rewards of that. Letting go doesn't just feel risky, it feels threatening to who you are. And I see it all the time. I see it in self-employment, I see it in entrepreneurship. People are paying for outsourcing to people and not utilising them. They're growing teams and they're not getting the best out of them. And they're saying it's because of the other person, and it's more often than not because they're not actually really letting go and letting that person be successful for them. Because we place our value in our own minds on our output rather than our leadership of others to deliver output. That's the first place I see the identity gap really start to show up. The second place, and this is not necessarily in sequential order, is decisions. Now again, earlier in our journeys, decisions are simpler. Not just because they're often easier, in fact maybe they're not easier when we're in the early stage of business, but they are simpler because the stakes feel lower. But as we grow, as our businesses grow, as our responsibilities grow, decisions carry more weight, not just for ourselves, but often for others, back to team, maybe for our clients, certainly commercially. As businesses grow, the commercial decisions get bigger, and the identity that we built, that we have embraced in our early stages of being decisive and figuring things out, starts to kind of fracture under a different pressure. Because we're not just deciding for ourselves and not so worried about the outcome, but because we're deciding for ourselves and our future self, because we're deciding and we have a ripple effect to the decision. And that's fundamentally different psychologically. And no one prepares you for that. And very often it comes along so quickly you barely even realise it's happened. Now, the third most common place I see the identity gap is how you relate to your own success. And I think this is the bit that people don't talk about enough. Many of the women that I work with have reached a level of success that almost scares them. Not because they don't want it, and certainly not because they don't deserve it, but probably because they didn't really think they'd get there. And also because they build an identity in striving for that success. So they've got to this level of success, and actually there's almost this kind of, where do I go now? Like, I don't know what to do now I've got here. And actually, many get to that place and realise it doesn't feel the way they thought it would. Or, and this is like different strands to this one, or get to that place and realise it's not what they thought it would be, and actually it's not what they want anymore. And now they're there, or they're closer than they've ever been. Self-doubt hasn't disappeared. It's not like everything's got easier because it's reached a level of success. If anything, it intensifies. And it throws in these other questions. There's more to lose when we get to certain levels of success. There's more people paying attention to what we're doing. The gap between who we project externally and who we feel we are internally has never been wider than where we are now versus where we were and where we thought we would be. Now, let's be really clear. Imposter syndrome doesn't go away when you become more successful. In fact, it intensifies. I've said it before, imposter syndrome is a sign of growth. Imposter syndrome is simply a result of being in a situation that feels very uncomfortable, that you probably haven't been in before. It's because your external reality has outpaced your internal reality. You haven't yet become, on the inside, the person that you probably already are or are very close to on the outside. So imposter syndrome in success is much more likely than in failure, which everyone thinks. Because so often people get to this level of success and then think, God, I don't even know how I did it. I don't know how I got here. I certainly don't deserve it. It doesn't feel like I thought it would. Oh my God. But that makes me really ungrateful. It brings up all kinds of stuff. So let's just talk about what all this means, because I've thrown quite a lot at you. I read an article at the weekend, and it was about this study around why intelligent, motivated adults struggle to change. It was quite an article. And it was about how they struggle to change even when they genuinely want to. I wish I'd found this like 8 months ago when I was starting to decide to close the collective. What this article said was, none of this is about willpower. It's not about discipline. It's not about desire or not trying hard enough. It is about the fact that fundamentally underneath every behaviour that looks like self-sabotage, i.e. not making the shifts and changes we want to for the things we say we want, there's a hidden commitment running the show. So something like, I need to be seen as capable. I can't afford to get this wrong. These statements might resonate for you. If I let go of this, what will it say to everyone? If I let go, something else will fall apart. And it will all prove I was never good enough in the first place. Those commitments are formed. These are self-commitments that we form to protect ourselves. At some point in your life, probably quite early on, these commitments have kept you safe. They've worked for you. But the problem is, like everything when it comes to mindset, they're running on old data. Data from a version of you that no longer fits the life you are building now, the business you are saying you want to get to. So in this article, this guy talks about two ways of operating that most adults move between in their lifetimes. The first, and honestly where most of us spend the majority of our time, is building our sense of self from the outside in. This is what most people do. We build our sense of self from the outside in, i.e. our results, our reputation, whether people around us think that we are capable, good, worthy, enough, whether everything looks okay to everybody else. And that becomes the place your identity is anchored. I've done this. I still catch myself doing that. I'm human. We're all human. We've all done that. But the real shift, the shift we need is not just a mindset tweak. The shift is when you start building your sense of self from the inside out, where your worth isn't dependent on the outcome of the next decision. When your worth isn't whether someone approved of your choice or whether everything you do, touch, want to get involved in turns out perfectly. It's where you get to a place where you can disappoint someone and not let it bring you to your knees. That doesn't mean you don't care, by the way. There's a sweet spot with everything. It's where you can hand something over and trust that you don't lose your value with that handing over, that you still have value even if you've handed something over to someone else. That is fundamentally a different way of moving through the world, and it's not easy. But reading this article really resonated because it's saying the version of you that has been running on external validation may have got you here. It's familiar, it's proven, your brain doesn't want to let go of something that has kept you safe, but that version of you has a ceiling. It has an end point. And I think we all know that. I know I'm not the woman I was 10 years ago, but I also know I can't truly say consciously I knew the woman I needed to become to be where I am now. And maybe if I had, I'd have got here quicker, which would enable me to get to the next stage even quicker. Not even quicker, just quicker. Or I'd be at the next stage. Hey, there's a thought. So let me just kind of be really clear about something before we move on. Everything that I've described, the feelings that we need of control, overfunctioning, imposter syndrome intensifying, decision fatigue, the feeling that something needs to shift but you're not quite sure what, none of it means that we're doing anything wrong. None of it means you're not ready. In fact, it means you're in the gap. It means you are ready. It means, and maybe this in itself is the line that will mean the most to you, it means you're in the gap between who you've been and who this next chapter is asking you to become. The gap isn't a problem to be fixed. It's a transition to be navigated. It's a journey to take, and I don't care how cheesy that sounds. With the right thinking and the right support, and of course, a bit of courage, you will be able to get to where you want to go. But you will have to make shifts and changes, and they will be internal shifts and changes. So here is what I want to offer you today. I'm not going to give you a 5-step plan. I'm not going to give you a list of all the things to do by the end of the week because that will fix everything. I just want to give you one reframe, one shift in perspective. I want you to stop diagnosing yourself as the problem. I want you to ask yourself, where is it I dream of getting to? What is it I dream of having, doing, being? What is the life I'm trying to create? What is the business I want to be running? What is the role I want to have? And where am I now and how am I operating? I don't apologize for using that word now. When things feel harder than they should, and we all know I don't like that word, but when things feel harder than you want them to, when the decisions feel heavier, when you feel more exhausted than the workload probably justifies, when you can feel yourself becoming the bottleneck in your own growth, the instinct is to look inward and ask, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just get it together? Why isn't this easier? Why aren't I making it happen? I want you to ask a different question. I want you to simply say, what is this level of growth asking of me? Who do I want to become? Who do I need to become? Think about who you look at that's where you want to be. What is it about them that you aspire to be, to do? Not what is wrong with you. What is being asked of you? What is required of you for the next chapter of your story? Because those two questions take you to a very different place. What is wrong with you sends you into self-diagnosis, self-criticism, and trying to fix a version of yourself that actually isn't the problem. It's got you to here. But the better questions give growth. They support transition, the journey. They will give you something that requires you to evolve, not improve. The version of you that built what you have today, the life you are living, was extraordinary. Please don't ever, ever forget that. She's done something remarkable, whether that's building a business, growing a family, building a family, being there for the people she's been there for, achieving the results she has right now. But she might not be who leads what comes next. I've been talking a lot about self-leadership recently. You're going to hear me use that term a lot more. Courageous self-leadership, if you really want me to be honest. The woman who leads what comes next is someone you are in the process of becoming. She's there, she's available to you, but she will not show up through more effort, working harder in the same way, in the same direction that you have been. She shows up when you get honest about what this level is asking of you. When you stop protecting the identity that got you here long enough to step into the one that your next chapter requires. That's the work. And it starts with asking a better question. So I really hope that's got you thinking differently, because every episode of this little season is going to take one of those real, very specific, quite unglamorous challenges that come with leading ourselves at a higher level. And I don't mean at a higher spiritual level, people. We're going to get into this stuff properly. I want to help you step into your next level, because that's where I'm going. I am stepping into my next level, and I am definitely experiencing challenges over making decisions, worrying about delegation, overthinking, worrying about visibility, over-functioning, and I'm going to take you on the journey with me. We're going to get into the cost of carrying everything, the gap between who you are becoming and who you have been. You know me well enough. There'll be no vague advice. There'll be no toxic positivity. There'll be no crappy coaching cliches. Real insight, sharp thinking, and the kind of conversations that will actually help you move forward. That's what I want for you. So if you are new here, welcome. I hope that you found something useful in this episode. If you've been with me for a while, I really hope that something has shifted in this episode, because the She is Courageous podcast is leveling up. I'm leveling up. I want you to level up too. And the invitation, as always, is for you to come on this journey with me. Because as I say every single week, she is courageous. She is you. So let's go to our next level.